You've spent your life believing you're rational, that you think before you act, that your choices are yours. But what if I told you your most critical decisions were made by something ancient, something older than thought, something cold, unseen, and brutally simple? It doesn't speak in words. It doesn't reason. It doesn't care about morality, or logic, or love. It only wants one thing: survival. This is the part of you that never evolved. The part buried beneath your cortex, beneath your personality, that still sees the world like a jungle. It's called the reptilian brain, and you're not separate from it. You are it. Let's go back, long before society, long before language, long before humans. There was instinct. Eat, kill, run, mate, dominate. This was the original programming, the code written in your neurons, the code that never got deleted. Even now, with smartphones and therapy and philosophy, that core still runs in the background. It controls your heartbeat, your breathing, your adrenaline, your fear. But it also controls more than that. It decides who you trust, who you follow, who you desire, who you want to destroy. And it does it all before you think. Let's talk about the triune brain model. 3 layers. The reptilian brain, primitive survival. The limbic system, emotion. Memory, the neocortex. Logic, reason, language. You live in the illusion that your neocortex is in charge, but it's not. The reptile moves first. The cortex just explains it after. You don't eat because you reasoned through nutrition. You eat because something inside you said, now. Hungry. Eat. You don't lash out because you've weighed the argument. You lash out because something deep beneath your thoughts screamed, threat, attack. Then your rational mind comes in and says, well, they deserved it. I was tired. I was standing up for myself. But the decision was already made. This isn't a flaw. It's design. Let's go deeper. Have you ever noticed how people obey authority, even when they don't agree? That's the reptilian mind. In the wild, hierarchy meant survival. You followed the strongest, or you died. We're still wired that way. That's why powerful voices command more attention. Why status symbols change how we treat people. Why a person in a suit is trusted more than someone who isn't. You think it's reason, but it's instinct. Still think you're in control? Let's talk about fear. The reptilian mind doesn't distinguish between types of fear. Public speaking, rejection, failure. To your primitive brain, these are all life-threatening. So it reacts, not with calm, but with shutdown, panic, freezing, rage, escape. You felt it, the pounding heart, the shaking hands, the inability to speak. That's not weakness. That's ancient programming. Still active, still powerful, still dominant. Let's talk about sex. You think attraction is about compatibility, kindness, shared values. But your body doesn't care about any of that. Your pupil dilate, your breath changes, your voice softens or deepens. Why? Because your reptilian mind is scanning for genetic fitness, status, fertility, dominance, submissiveness. This happens before you even speak. And that gut feeling, that spark, that chemistry, it's not magic. It's animal. Let's talk about tribalism. Why do we divide ourselves into nations, teams, belief systems, skin colors, flags? Because the reptile in your brain is obsessed with us versus them. It wants to belong. It wants to exclude. It wants enemies. This isn't a social flaw. It's a survival adaptation. You weren't wired for global cooperation. You were wired for group defense. And when your brain sees an outsider, it doesn't ask questions. It triggers suspicion. Or worse, hatred. Now imagine that mind, living in the modern world, surrounded by complex systems, information overload, social media, politics. The reptile doesn't understand nuance. It reacts to tone, threat, dominance, submission, and it controls you while you think you're thinking. Let's pause. You've built your life around a self-image. Rational, evolved, kind, independent. But beneath that mask, the beast never left. You felt it, even if you didn't recognize it. That moment when your vision narrows, your heart pounds, your voice rises, and something inside you takes the wheel. You say things you didn't mean. Or maybe you meant them too much. You break things, ruin things, then regret everything. That wasn't a bad day. That was the reptile taking over. Let's talk about emotional hijack. In high-stress moments, your neocortex, the thinking brain, goes offline. Literally, blood flow shifts to the limbic system and brainstem, to instinct, to survival mode. You stop thinking clearly. You react. You fight. You run. You freeze. Your body prepares for war. Even if all that happened was a disagreement, or a comment, or a silence that lasted too long. This happens in arguments, traffic, relationships, politics. The world triggers your primal systems, and you become something else? Not broken, not weak, just ancient. Let's talk about dominance. Watch a political debate. Watch a corporate meeting. Watch a romantic fight. What are you actually seeing? A battle for territory, for position, for who gets to win. The words are just decoration. The real contest is in tone, volume, body posture, eye contact. It's animal. Two nervous systems locked in a silent war. Two egos flaring like lizards in a mating ritual. You feel it. You've lived it. You've done it. Let's talk about jealousy. It doesn't come from logic. You know they love you. You know they're loyal. But the reptile doesn't care. It sees a threat. Another mate. Another hunter near your food source. So it reacts. With suspicion. With obsession. With rage. You check their phone. You stalk their social. You sabotage the peace. Then cry later. You weren't trying to hurt them. You were trying to protect your place in the tribe. Let's talk about status. We pretend we don't care. We say things like, I don't compare myself to others. I'm not in competition. But the reptilian brain always keeps score. It notices who gets more attention, who speaks louder, who walks in the room with presence, who gets laughed at, who gets touched, who gets ignored, and it assigns value. Sometimes that value lifts you. Other times it crushes you. That's why envy burns so deep. It's not just disappointment. It's perceived displacement. The tribe might favor someone else. You might be pushed out. Alone. Unprotected. Your life isn't at risk. But your body doesn't know that. So it panics. Let's talk about revenge. It's not rational. It never was. The reptile doesn't care about proportion. It doesn't care about fairness. It wants to destroy what hurt it, even if it costs everything. Think of all the times you've held on to a grudge, not because it helped, but because it fed something in you, that growling instinct that said, they need to suffer too. You didn't invent that feeling. It was given to you, by evolution, by biology, by blood. Let's talk about addiction. The reptile loves patterns. It loves reward. It loves certainty. So when you find something that gives you dopamine, it wants more. Not because it makes sense, but because it feels good. That's why people return to relationships that hurt them. Why they scroll endlessly. Why they eat what makes them sick. Why they lie to themselves. The cortex knows better. But the reptile doesn't care. It only knows pleasure, pleasure, survival. So it repeats, and repeats, and repeats, even when it kills you. Let's talk about crowds. Ever wonder why protests turn violent? Why people riot? Why a peaceful gathering explodes? Because group energy bypasses the individual brain. The neocortex dissolves in crowds. And what's left? The reptile. Raw, riled up, hungry for justice, or blood. You become something you'd never be alone. Because in the tribe, your fear decreases, your power increases, and your instincts ignite. Still think you're above it? Still think you're safe? Let's pause. You've seen what happens when the reptilian mind takes over. You felt it. You've acted from it. You just didn't have a name for it. Until now. But here's the most disturbing part. You don't control it. You only notice it. After. You've heard this voice before. Felt it. Maybe even feared it. The growl beneath your thoughts. The heat rising in your chest. The impulse to run. Lash out. Retreat. Destroy. And now you know its name. The reptilian mind. But here's the question that terrifies most people. Can you escape it? Let's be honest. You can meditate. You can read. You can learn language, philosophy, ethics, mindfulness. But underneath all of that, the reptile remains. Watching. Waiting. Triggering your heartbeat when something moves too fast. Flooding your chest when someone gets too close. Whispering old instructions into your muscles. Survive. Dominate. Don't trust them. Let's talk about spiritual bypassing. Some believe they've evolved beyond the primitive mind. That enlightenment removes instinct. But often, they've just repressed it, buried it, painted over it with spiritual words. But the shadow doesn't disappear because you ignore it. It just moves deeper. And when it comes back, it's stronger, hungrier, more cunning. The truth is, you don't escape the reptile. You live with it. And most of your suffering comes from pretending it's not there. Let's talk about modern life. Your phone is designed to trigger the reptile. Notifications, dopamine hits, red bubbles, urgency, threat, endless scroll, no completion, always seeking, outrage of content, anger equals tribal bonding. You're being fed a diet, not for your higher brain, but for your oldest brain, because it reacts fast. And reaction equals money. Let's talk about relationships. So many people sabotage love, not because they don't want connection, but because the reptile sees it as vulnerability. To open up is to risk being left, buying shamed, buying hurt. So it builds walls, tests partners, starts fights for no reason, not to harm, but to survive. Because closeness once meant pain, and your reptile remembers what your mind forgets. Let's talk about shame. Why does it feel like death? Because in tribal societies, shame was death. Rejection equals exile. Actually, plus starvation. So when someone mocks you online, or ignores your message, or humiliates you in public, your brain doesn't say, "This is unfortunate." It says, "We are dying," and your body responds accordingly. Panic, collapse, aggression, numbness. It's not dramatic. It's biological. Let's talk about resistance to change. Why is it so hard to let go of beliefs, even false ones? Because belief, stability, and stability equals survival. If your worldview shatters, the reptile feels unsafe. Even if the new belief is better, the transition feels like death. So the mind defends the old, clings, rationalizes, fights, not because it's right, but because it's familiar. Let's talk about violence. No one wants to admit it, but you're capable of terrible things, given the right conditions, the right context, the right justification. History proves this. Ordinary people become monsters when the tribal alarm is pulled, because the reptile doesn't ask, "Is this moral?" It asks, "Are they a threat to us?" And once labeled a threat, anything becomes justifiable. Let's talk about awareness. Awareness won't erase the reptile, but it will reveal its patterns. It will help you see when it speaks. And pause. Not to fight it, but to understand it. You'll still feel fear, lust, envy, rage. But you won't act blindly. You'll watch, feel, breathe, then choose. And that is the only real freedom, not from the reptile, but within it. Let's talk about integration. You are not a mistake. You are not a glitch. You are a layered intelligence. Animal, emotional, cognitive, spiritual. The goal isn't to erase the beast. It's to listen to it, understand it, then decide who drives. Because the beast will never leave. But it doesn't have to lead. Let's end here. You live in a world that exploits your instincts. That feeds your fear. That triggers your tribalism. That profits from your panic. But now you see it. You feel it. The voice under the voice. The breath under the breath. The ancient presence behind your daily life. The reptile. You were never meant to escape it. But now that you know it's there, you don't have to obey it.